In this episode of A Girl and a Gun, we talk about the documentary Stoush Bob Connolly has started. We look at what Kevin Spacey thinks about House of Cards and Netflix, and John Mazels tells us about his US adventures.
A Girl and a Gun, episode 18, filmed 5th of September 2013. We're back.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we're still at the sun.
Hello, welcome to A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I'm Phil Moore, and I'm joined as always by John Mazels.
Hello, Phil. It's so good to be back again for the new season of A Girl and a Gun.
Just in time, you've just flown in this morning, haven't you?
Well, you know, in great tradition, yes. You get off a plane and you do television. Isn't that what everybody does?
And this, as you say, this is a new season of the show. Being a new semester at CIFA, Sydney Institute Film Academy, we have a group of new students behind the cameras and in the control room. And we're actually going to change the format a little bit. Maybe not with this episode, but in future episodes, we'll be doing hopefully 2 episodes a week, 2 shorter episodes a week.
Shorter episodes.
Yeah.
That means we've got to talk a bit less.
Yes.
Okay. So probably we should get on with it.
We should get on with it, and we'll start with the breaking news of this week. And first off, in Australian news, Bob Connolly, who's a well-known documentary filmmaker from this country, he gave a speech at the first screening of Once My Mother, which is a new documentary feature film by Sophia Turkowitz. I mean, it had a bit of a slam at ABC and SBS commissioning editors and the whole funding process for documentaries in Australia. And it's caused a bit of a stink. There's been like 5 different responses to this. Fellow documentary filmmakers such as Trevor Graham writing, yes, he's right, and this is a marriage that cannot continue. In many cultures, what's happening is a prelude to divorce, effectively, they're saying, meaning divorce from the funding bodies and the whole process. The editor from ABC and SBS have both responded with their points of view on this. It's becoming a big as they call it here on Screen Hub, documentary stoush.
But of course, funding for documentaries is always going to be a challenge in any environment. People don't pay big money to go to main tent and see documentaries. So without a bit of funding, you're really not going to get the best quality work made because you won't get the right amount of funding to underpin it.
No. Well, I think we have a bit of the trailer for the film in question here. So let's run a little bit of that trailer right now, if we could.
I'm losing you.
What's your name?
I'm Sophia.
You're not Sophia, darling.
Yeah,
My daughter is different.
I'm losing the woman who was once my mother. Who are you now? Who were you then?
See, I was cruel in the street. I was 16 when married,
Okay, so
and then they took me to the Siberia.
turn the sound down on that while we talk over, maybe. So, as Bob says here, for reasons best known to them, the then ABC and SBS commissioning editors repeatedly passed on the film. It took several years to get made, just to find the funding to do it. When you see it, he says, you'll wonder, like me, how that could happen, but pass they did. And he goes on and has a real slam at the industry and said, so yes, this is becoming a rather major to-do.
But why were they passing on it? Was it that they didn't consider it to be the right product to put to air? Was it that they considered that the product wasn't worthy of being created? I mean, just to say that...
You're playing devil's advocate here, aren't you?
I am. Just to say that the funding was rejected and therefore the funding bodies are bad or the television networks are bad, that doesn't sort of ring terribly true.
It basically comes down to, for documentary funding, there's 2 gatekeepers. The commissioning editors, ABC and SBS, and if you don't get funding from either of them, you cannot get the funding to make your doco in this country, basically. Screen Australia goes to, you've got to have a distributor, and they're the only distributors for television. And if you don't get them, you can't get the funding from Screen Australia.
Are the commercial networks not doing any documentary work at all?
Why would they?
I love the way you went. Yeah.
No, they're the 2 main people that would do it, and if you can't get them on board, then you simply can't get it made. So the funding model has to change. it was hard enough to make a doco that made any money in the first place anyway. But and it comes down to the two people that are in charge in that chair.
But hang on a minute. If you've got a good enough documentary...
This is apparently a very good doco.
Yeah, but if you've got a good enough documentary, people like Michael Moore have proved that you can make a documentary that touches people's hearts.
Yeah, we don't have a Michael Moore in this. Bob's our closest thing to a Michael Moore in this country, frankly, and he's always struggled to get funding for his films.
Why?
That's the question. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you want to chase that up, have a look if you're a member on Screen Hub. There's quite a thing. Just look for Documentary Stoush on Screen Hub.
And meanwhile, we'll all go off shooting for Columbine or eating McDonald's or whatever it is that you do. Well,
still in Australia, distribution of Australian films. There was a seminar here, a podium by a lot of distributors. Cinefest Oz audience played with some honest facts and some ghastly fears, they say here. Do you have the courage to read Sandy George's report? So Sandy George here for Screen Hub. What it comes down to, most Australian films do not make money. Most of them can barely get distributed. The ones that do well, and we usually have one or two a year, are films like Red Dog, Brand New Day, Sapphires, Animal Kingdom. What's the similarity between these films?
No, it's not that they've all got dogs in them.
No, but they're all very, very much Australian parochial kinds of stories. They're generally, apart from Animal Kingdom maybe, they're generally feel-good films. With
Red Dog had a sort of this massive twist in it, but yes.
Yes, and they're mostly set in outback type of, they're very Australian kind of films, you know.
Does that mean we're not capable of turning out a rom-com,
No, it means that people don't go to see them. A rom-com would probably work, but Australian audiences don't go to see Australian films unless they're of this kind, which is a small, very Australian...
What about the classic Australian science fiction movie, Mad Max?
Yes. In its day, it was big, sure. It wasn't at first, though. It got big. And there's a few exceptions. Look at Crocodile Dundee, which is the biggest Australian film still, okay? It pretty much fits this. It's a very parochial Australian film. It's about Australianisms, you know, and all that, and it's set in the outback and all that kind of stuff. It fits that formula.
Australia didn't do all that well at the box office, although, you know, how has it done commercially afterwards?
It did well enough. It was pretty big. It wasn't as big as they'd hoped, being an American studio-funded film, but it does fit that model. It was a big film of that kind, and it did okay. Great Gatsby is doing okay, but it's not really an Australian film.
No, hardly an Australian film. No. It was just produced here.
But if you look at ones that do well and potentially can actually make a profit, they're fairly low budget. They have this sense of the outback in them, and or fairly small dramas or comedies kind of thing, or maybe a bit of period like the Sapphires was. Most other films, and I would love to be doing more genre films in this country, they just don't sell in this country.
Interestingly, the two things about that are going to get produced here, Australian films and overseas films which are produced in Australia. Well, now that the Australian dollar is tanking, of course, it becomes more attractive to produce films here for overseas producers. But that doesn't make a stuff of difference to people who are producing Australian films in Australia, because the economics presumably don't change that much.
No, look at the quote here. Look at the other end of the spectrum, and the films that flounder here often aren't very defined in the kind of emotional responses they're trying to elicit. It happens everywhere, not just here. We are more aware of it when it's a homegrown film. So they're films that elicit a strong emotional response, that tug at the heartstrings, basically. Yeah. The films that do well are ones that tug at the heartstrings.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Yes.
Tugs at the heartstrings.
Anyway, that seems to be what the distributors are finding, and they're the kinds of films they're looking for and are funding, because they're the ones that work with audiences.
It is.
Regardless of what their favourites might be.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, tugged at the G-strings, but that's a matter for another day.
Getting away from Australia, Kevin Spacey, who was an executive producer and star, of course, of House of Cards on Netflix.
And what a brilliant piece of work! Are you waiting for the second series?
I am indeed.
We are just on tenterhooks in the Mays household, waiting for season 2 of House of Cards.
I love the original English series. I love this remake of it as well. He's done a speech here, a talk here, talking about that experience of making it with Netflix and releasing the entire series all at once. And basically, the calling card for most people of this new kind of distribution platform is make it available when people want it, the way they want it, at an affordable price, you know, and people will not quote it. They'll pay for it and they'll watch it however they want. We've got a bit of this lined up, in fact, so let's watch a bit of Kevin Spacey and this talk.
cost-effective. Clearly, the success of the Netflix model, releasing the entire season of House of Cards at once, proved one thing. The audience wants the control. They want the freedom. If they want to binge, as they've been doing on House of Cards and lots of other shows, then we should let them binge. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have stopped me on the street and said, "Thanks, you sucked 3 days out of my life." And through this new form of distribution, we have demonstrated that we have learned the lesson that the music industry didn't learn. Give people what they want, when they want it, in the form they want it in, at a reasonable price, and they'll more likely pay for it rather than steal it.
So
Well,
there you go.
some
That's
will still
become
steal
the
it,
new
but-
calling card for this new distribution model.
And that's the incredibly strong point. They will more likely pay for it than steal it.
Yes, as long as it's readily available in a way they want.
Yeah. Now, like here in Australia, it was shown on Foxtel. So in our household, we watched as the episodes came out and as they were released. So it was 3 episodes on the first week and 2 episodes every week following
But
that.
you can choose how to watch it, yes.
Well, of course, you have the additional option to record it on the box and watch it when it suits you. Or
But you
if
could have, and I watched like 2 episodes a week because that's as much as I could handle. But you could have watched the whole lot at once. They made the whole lot available for.
Well, you couldn't have watched it
on-demand.
on Foxtel all at once because they were still gating it on the basis
No,
of
but
2
you could.
episodes every
There was
week.
on-demand
But
where you could, yes.
Yeah. If you had that facility,
Yeah.
we didn't.
Oh, okay. Yes, and we don't have Netflix here, so we don't have that kind of thing. There are attempts at that, like QuickFlix, which is having trouble financially still. There's a story about that. But this is the new model, and this is, again, going back to distribution for Australian films, and this goes to the question we're going to have later for Pick My Brain, in fact. There's a new way of distributing films or TV, and it's totally changing. In fact, my approach to this is cinema and television are no longer descriptors of content. They're descriptors simply of a platform that you can go to. No,
What you mean, as in you think of cinema as just long form television on a bigger screen?
Right, cinema is a movie that goes to the cinema, you go to the movie house and you watch it.
Yeah.
Cinema means, literally now, it's a movie, wherever it's shown. Most
think
TV
of-
shows are very cinematic after all.
Well, sure, but then I guess your only definition then, you differentiator for television would be you expect to have ads in the middle.
Maybe, but it doesn't have to be seen on TV, it can be shown on a laptop, it can be shown in the cinema, it can be shown on an iPad, on an iPhone,
When
whatever.
is it television and not cinema then?
It depends on the quality of the content.
If it's crap quality content, it's
I'm
television?
not saying television is crap, not at all.
Well, tell me how you think this works. I'm not following what your differentiator is.
They're all blending together, where a movie doesn't have to be cinema, television doesn't mean it has to be on the box, because there are so many platforms now, right? So many episodic, so many single drum platforms. The definitions become pretty much redundant.
Oh, maybe this is something we can explore
This is
in
it.
another
But this is
episode.
kind of-
What is the difference between television and film?
Yeah. And we're at the very beginning of this. This is kind of what Kevin Spacey is speaking to. It's like the whole, it's changing not just the way we watch it, but the kind of stuff we watch and how it's presented to us.
But here's the thing that has been proven more than anything else. He said, if you give people the product at the right price, they will pay for it, not steal it. And House of Cards is going into a second season based entirely on the funding model of put the whole thing out there in one bash.
And the idea, and we'll get off this, but the idea was that they went with Netflix because they said, we will guarantee you 2 whole series, here's the money, go make it, we won't interfere. And that's why they made it that way. That's why they made it for Netflix. They had 2 series guaranteed.
And it's a fabulous show.
Yes.
Just
sort of still on this, Larry Lessig, who's a very well-known copyright lawyer in the US, and he goes around, he's done a lot of talks about this and about possible changes and suggestions to change to the copyright law. There's a very well-known TED talk that he did, which I actually use in lessons a lot of the time when I'm teaching copyright. He did a piece a couple of years ago back in South Korea, a rather lengthy talk. It was only recently posted online, this South Korean talk that he did. As soon as it happened, in that he used some clips from the band Phoenix with a song called Listomania. And there were some YouTube examples of people using this song and doing mashup videos and doing their own variations, you know, which is what happens. He's showing how people repurpose content and do their own mashups to it. And he's using this as an example of what he's talking about. There's 2 ways that you can have a clip taken down on YouTube. The content ID, the fingerprinting finds it and finds a match and maybe pulls it down if the original content owner wants it taken down automatically, or the original content owner files a DMCA claim, which is what
DMCA,
a copyright claim.
Yeah.
So the record company behind this song went straight to him and said, take it down.
take it down.
Take it down. He said, no, this is fair use. They wrote to him directly and emailed him literally directly and said, take it down or we're suing you. So he took it down. And then he sued them back with the EFF, whoever they are, to, quote, file for declaratory judgment that the video does not infringe and, more importantly, to seek DMCA 512 damages against Liberation Records for filing a totally bogus takedown notice.
It's a very tough thing. Like, when is it fair use and when is it not fair use?
He's using as an example with educational type video promotion, and he clearly states who the copyright owners are. He doesn't steal it or anything else. This is interesting because this case could well become the benchmark case for these kinds of disputes. I think Liberation Records are foolish for going after Larry Lessig, to be honest. In fact, I think we have it lined up. We have a little bit of the offending song and clip. Let's see if we get a takedown notice just by showing this bit right now.
Most directly described or manifested in contexts like YouTube. So think, for example, about this. Here's a YouTube video that I found.
Soldier Boy, tell. Hey, I got this new dance for y'all called the Soldier Boy. You gotta punch, then crank back 3 times from left to right. Soldier Boy, I'm in it.
That video then inspired this video.
Okay.
So
now we've got our own takedown. We've had enough of that.
If you're watching this, we're going to do a fair use claim against them, probably.
Yeah. If they haven't taken us off
if they
already.
haven't taken us off the air already, just for showing that. So yeah, by using those examples, which he talks over the top of, as we were doing, anyway, this will become a landmark case, I hope, to prevent people taking down things that do have a genuine fair use for this kind of stuff.
We'll come back and talk about this as part of the experience that I've just had doing the Hugo Awards ceremony from the US last Sunday. And when we did this, 2 years ago on Ustream actually broke the stream when we showed the nominee clips for the best short form and long form dramatics. We've talked about this. This time we went to a very large amount of trouble to get the entire broadcast whitelisted because we had the permission to play those clips and play the excerpts. Of course, it was absolutely fair use because we're about to give them an award.
Yeah. He also uses a clip from the Jon Stewart Daily Show, quite a lengthy clip. They haven't complained. But have a look at any Larry Lessig videos, the ones on TED or this one, which I think, where was that on? That was on blip.tv, you can find it. It was taken down off YouTube, it's still down from there. The original article came from Tech Dirt. So you can read the whole thing there if you have a look on Tech Dirt for Larry Lessig threatened with copyright infringement. We'll keep you informed of what happens with that. At
some point, I think we might have a bit of a discussion about how you track all of these fragments of material through a production process, because that goes to the very heart of trying to track and therefore be able to assert rights in material that is used and reused and reused.
Yes, indeed. I mean,
it's a huge commercial challenge.
Yes, it is. Moving right along. Further news, Gilbert Taylor, cinematographer for Star Wars.
The original Star Wars.
The original, the very first Star Wars. That's what he's best known for, but he goes way back. He worked on Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, 7 Hours to Noon. He worked on the TV series The Avengers. He's worked with Polanski, he's worked with lots of people. But yes, he'll always be best remembered as the guy that shot Star Wars.
I didn't know he did The Avengers, and we're talking there about a series that was produced in the 1960s.
Yeah.
The original Star Wars, of course, was, 1976 to 1977, right about then?
Yeah. He also worked on a lot of the Bolting Brothers films way back. There's a lovely quote here from him. When he worked on Star Wars, he says, he's most happy to be remembered as a man who set the look for Star Wars. He says here, I wanted to give it a unique visual style that would distinguish it from other films in the science fiction genre. I wanted Star Wars to have clarity because I don't think space is out of focus. So unlike a lot of sci-fis, he wanted to make it clean and sharp. There was a lot of black and white on set. He famously had disputes with George Lucas on set about how to their working relationship. But I think it worked out okay by the sound of
Well,
it.
it certainly looked okay. It's very interesting going back and looking at the original Star Wars.
This is
which
why
was
I'm wearing
what,
the shirt too, by the way.
Episode.
Yes,
Oh,
in memory of-
okay.
yeah.
Hi everybody. This is Phil, who's going.
So this is in honour of Gilbert Taylor.
Okay. Go back and have a look at that original Star Wars too. I mean, the pictures really do look nice. What you notice compared to today is the effects, which were all opticals in those days, and you can see when they do that
Well, you
going
can't
through
see the
going through
original
the
film
Death Star
anymore.
thing, where they're going to go and do that big gun battle. It gets quite soft on some of the compositing,
Well,
which
that's
you don't
all the
expect to see
model
today.
work, though. Yes, it's hard. Well, you can't see the original film because George Lucas has messed with it so much now and changed things and fixed a lot of the little optical flaws that were there originally digitally.
Yeah. It's all been enhanced.
But look, the basic cinematography is still valid, still there, and still looks great. So, valet to Gilbert Taylor. Finally, we have some German film students have done a mock Mercedes-Benz ad, and I won't tell you anything about it. Let's just run that and have a look at it. So yeah, Mercedes-Benz, I think it's very funny. I think it's very actually apropos, but Mercedes-Benz, no, we have no responsibility. We take no responsibility for that.
Somebody's done a great job with that soundtrack.
Yeah,
That's
really good.
Really good soundtrack.
Anyway, there you go. What we're going to go to now is what we're going to normally do in this new format for the show.
This new format that
new
we've just formatted.
Yeah, is news and reviews, and then our second episode, which will probably start next week, would be interviews and tutorials. So we have a review. This is a review that I did recently of the new PluralEyes version 3 for Windows. It's about 10 minutes long, but I think it's pretty good. Go into a lot of depth, and it's also a bit of a tutorial actually. So let's roll that now. Have a look at PluralEyes 3 for Windows. Hello, Phil Moore here, and today we're going to have a look at PluralEyes 3 for Windows, the new version of PluralEyes. This version's been out on the Mac for a few months now, but it's only just been released as of this recording for Windows. Now, PluralEyes is basically designed to help you synchronize video and audio, like a two-system recording, and normally you'd use a slate to help synchronize. I'll show you that process, the old-fashioned way of doing it, in a moment. It will also help you synchronize multi-cam footage together. Now, the old way of doing this kind of thing was, and let me just see if I've got here a training video that I've been recently working on, and we have 3 days worth of shooting here. I'm just going to take some clips from day one, and you can see here I brought into Premiere all these separate wave audio recordings and all the video clips. If I drag the first of these clips across, you can see here there is the vision with the camera sound. This was shot on a Canon 7D. And there should be some audio to match with that. So if I zoom in here and find my slate, okay, and on this particular day I was using a iPad slate. Right, so we can see there 111 basically. It's a shot 1, take 1, scene 1. Okay, so there's the audio that's meant to match with that. I'll drag that down here to audio track 2. I'm going to expand this so we can see it a bit better. Open that track up, open this track up. zoom in, turn that one off.
Totally there, Phil. Actually, don't.
Let me find where the slate was called, which is right there. We pull this up. Now I'm going to just have a listen to the audio. Which is that one there. Right, and that there is the slap. So let's find that slap on the camera sound. It's right there. There's a couple of extra background noises there on top of it. Okay, so that is going to line right up with that one there. Okay, they should now be synchronized. So if we go back, I'll turn this one off. We'll just listen to the synced audio. And we're synced. Now, how long did that take me? Within Premiere, I can now take all of that, right-click, and merge clips. Call it, it'll give it a name, call it merged. And from now on, if I put that into a new timeline, that becomes a merged clip. I could also, if I wanted to, get rid of the original camera sound, but I'd just keep it there as a backup and mute it. And that's now one clip. I now have to do that with every single clip to manually synchronize this with their second system sound. It's a very tedious process. Okay, let me show you how this works now using PluralEyes. All of the footage from day one. I'm going to take all of the audio. I'm just going to drop them onto audio track 2. Take all of the vision. Drop that onto video and audio track 1. I make no effort to synchronize this. I'm just lining them up, saying all of this is going to match somehow with all of that. We go to Window, Extensions, PluralEyes 3. It will ask me to save the project, so we'll do that. Now this is exporting it as a Final Cut Pro XML, which is fine. Basically it's an XML file, which PluralEyes itself can read and write. Alright, PluralEyes is now saying, I'm importing files from Premiere, and there's multiple sequences already in that project. So we're going to import sequence 04. I'm just going to rescale this so you can all see what I'm doing. Right, now what it's doing is loading the project, and basically it's doing what Premiere Pro calls conforming. It's drawing the waveforms and working out the timecode for all of the clips that it's bringing in. So just give that a few seconds and I'll zip ahead. Okay, that just took a couple of minutes. There's about 30 minutes worth of footage altogether that it had to import and conform there. So now you can see we have the audio from camera 1 and the audio recorder 1. So what I'm going to do now is simply hit synchronize. It will go through all of these, compare the audio from the recorder and the camera, and very quickly match them and line them up. And it's done. Took that long. So all these green clips are ones that have been synchronized. All of these pink red clips are ones that could not find a match for. And they might be wild lines or Foley sound or dud recordings of some kind. Likewise with the red video clip here, it's probably a dud take where there was background noise and we just stopped the take immediately. It looks like a very short clip. Just to double check this, let's click on one at random. Now we're hearing both the camera and the recorded audio, but you can see that they're both in sync. So let's export that timeline, and this is taking us straight back using XML again, back into Premiere. So there's our original, and it has created a couple of new timelines, if I can see where it put them. There they are. So sequence 04 synced, which was that. So this was everything that PluralEyes did in synchronizing the clips, and I can double check it all there if I want. But beyond that, it also made a new sequence, replaced. It got rid of the camera sound and replaced it with the this the zoom sound automatically and linked the clips together. So that's ready to go. Everything is synchronized now and ready to cut. I just have to double check maybe a few clips like this where there was no audio. If I have a look at this one, for example. And clearly you can see there's someone walking in the background, so we just stopped that take immediately before sound even got rolling. Likewise here, there's a couple of dud takes. So there, I can safely delete those once I've checked them. Other ones like this, the camera was rolling. Actually, we were getting some B-roll stuff here where there was no sound. Then all of a sudden we said, let's go. Our cameraman just kept on rolling, sound rolled up, and it's found it. So even when the camera and the audio are clearly at different lengths and starting in different places, there's enough there for it to work out and synchronize it. And there's no dialogue in this either, by the way. This is just Foley sound. And it's managed to work it out and find the matches there. Brilliant. I just have to do that with the other days. That took all of 5 minutes at the most, rather than doing everyone individually. Okay, let's give this a bit more of a challenge. On day 2 of this particular project, we had 2 cameras and 2 separate audio recorders because we actually had 3 microphones running, 3 lavalier lapel microphones. So let's put everything from camera A into video 1, camera B into video 2, the first zoom recorder into audio 3, and the second zoom recorder. You can see there's an earlier version there, but I'll show you again how we did this. And that's going to end up down here in audio 7. Let's get rid of these unwanted tracks. Okay. Now as you can see, the second audio recorder here, there isn't nearly as much recorded as on the main one. There's a lot more recorded on that. And I think that's because on the first audio recorder we did some wild lines and Foley and other stuff like that as well. There's a lot of extra audio on that. But let's see how PluralEyes copes with that. We haven't synchronized anything, we've just thrown them onto the timeline. And we'll save the project. And we're now going to choose day 2. And you can see there's an earlier version there that I did, but I'll do this again for the sake of this demo. Choose day 2 and say OK. It's still importing the video for this, so let's give it a few minutes. Okay, there's about an hour's worth of footage in this out of 2 cameras and 2 recorders, so that took about 3 minutes to process. And as you can see here, because we now have 2 cameras, I could also do a 2-up display if I wanted. So if I choose a section at random here. Right. So what we did here, in fact, was we shot generally the same side from a 2-shot and a close-up because our actors are actually working off an auto cue at this point. So that looks wrong at the moment, but let's synchronize this and see what we get. Now you can see the green is synchronized, and when we see some red bits, it'll be clips that don't seem to have a matching clip or audio clip to go with them. And you're just watching and zip through all of that stuff, finding the matches, and it's done. So as we can see here, we have 3 cameras, 2 cameras I should say, camera 1, camera 2, and 2 audio recorders. Further along we have some clips that don't appear to match audio. So again, there's some dud takes and that kind of thing. But if I look at one of these, for example, just randomly, here you can see the 2-shot and the close-up. If I play this, and we're hearing a mixture of camera sound and sync sound there. Let's export this out to Premiere. Day 2 synced and replaced. So what it's done is it's synchronized them, and it's also replaced all the camera sound with the sync sound.
Okay. And the next one.
And they were wearing radio mics. So this is now just radio mics.
Great.
For the first shot and the second shot there. So when there's not a match, it gives you a red flag and says, I can't match that. But this is brilliant. It's actually matched up 2 separate cameras, 2 separate audio recorders, with 3 different audio tracks all lined up. I'm now ready to start editing that straight away. This has saved me, if I do this to all 3 days worth of footage with multiple cameras, multiple sound, this has saved me basically a day's worth of synchronizing audio and video clips together. Very laborious, tedious work. It will have done the entire job in about 10 minutes, and I'm ready to start cutting. It can also do this with larger multicam sequences. If it doesn't support the video format, these happen to be shot with H.264 out of the Canon 7D. But I've tried this with Panasonic P2 MXF files. PluralEyes couldn't read the video, but it could read the audio, so it was able to synchronize them even without seeing the vision. It could use the audio to synchronize the cameras together. So this is PluralEyes 3 for Windows, now available. Brilliant for synchronizing 2-system filming with cameras and separate audio recorders, or multicam setups with 2, 3, potentially more cameras. If you're doing a lot of this kind of work, synchronizing separate video and audio, PluralEyes is an essential plugin. So this is available for Adobe Premiere Pro CS6, Sony Vegas, Avid Media Composer, and also Canopus Edius. And of course on the Mac it's available for Final Cut Pro X. Okay, there we go. Now you've just got back from the US, haven't you?
I have. On the morning of the preparation of this episode, in fact.
Yes. What were you there for?
Well, yeah, I had to go and see my mother-in-law. So that was like a week.
Shall we talk about your mother-in-law?
No, let's not talk about my mother-in-law.
Let's talk about what else you did.
No. I did a cruise. We could talk about that.
No, I want you went to the Hugo Awards.
Well, I didn't just go to them. I was at the World Science Fiction Convention and I directed the award ceremony. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the technology that we used with that in a future episode.
Okay.
The award ceremony was going out to the house, clearly. It was the first time we'd done it in full high definition. And it was going to Ustream. And you can see some of the Ustream clips. So if you go to your favourite browser and you search on Hugo Awards, you'll pick the clips that have come from this year's convention because there is a Lone Star Con logo in the background, a guy who looks like a star. They called him Tony for some reason. The reason I say you'll see bits of it is because after going to all the trouble to have Ustream whitelist the award ceremony, and we worked very, very closely with Ustream, we had network and hardware meltdowns on the night. And it just goes to show that you can never have too many levels of backup. So all the recording was made, and in the next week or so, the full-length recording will be put back up. But you can see some of the pictures now. And what is quite extraordinary is the level of crispness of the video on Ustream playback. So you can look at the pictures on a pad, and they are just stunningly clean.
Okay, and what were the awards like themselves? I mean, you're probably caught up with the whole conference and getting this Ustream thing happening, I guess. You didn't get much of a chance to go around the conference?
Mate, no, hardly any. I was on a panel, the War of the Worlds, the H.G. Wells broadcast that was done by Orson Welles.
The original, oh yes.
Yeah, is now, I think it's its 75th anniversary of that happening, so we had a bit of a discussion about that. But no, do I remember anything about the Hugo Awards? Can I tell you anybody who won anything? Of course not. I was there doing the program.
You're working.
But all went straight over my head.
All right. But we'll talk more about the technicalities of that maybe in a later episode.
I certainly have some interesting things to say about the Ross 24-2 vision switcher. That was my first experience using one of those. Very, very interesting device.
Yes?
So yes, we'll talk about that in a future app.
Okay. What we have now, if you remember looking at our last series, we had a whole series of tutorials with Karel Segers. Well, we never quite got to the end of those. We still have a couple of episodes of those in the can. So we're going to show the next in that series about the 3-act structure right now. Hello, welcome to part 6 in our series on screenwriting with Karel Segers. Hello, Karel.
Hello, Phil.
Now, we've talked a lot about character. Screenplay, as far as I'm concerned anyway, is structure. So, and there's a common 3-act structure that most people talk about. What is that exactly?
Well, I wish more people were convinced of it the way you are, Phil. But yeah, some people have said structure is everything, and I think it is very important. It's got to do with, the other day we were talking about how actions need to be laid out in a meaningful way. Well, structure does that, and the 3-act structure is the oldest form that does that. You have it in any type of story, whether it's a fairy tale or a play or a movie screenplay. In movies, because movies play out in time and they have a fixed time, it's even more important you get it right.
Now, put it simply, we're just talking about beginning, middle, end.
Well,
yeah?
Aristotle said that. Aristotle, 3,000 years ago said you have a beginning, But interestingly, his beginning was not at the beginning. He had a prologue. A prologue, and in the beginning was what we would call the inciting incident or the call to adventure. And that's really where the story starts. And if you're aware of that, then you know that whatever happens before that, the audience is waiting. They're waiting for the story to start, right? So that, in our thinking, that's all first act. And it was Sid Field in 1979 who published Screenplay, the book, with his paradigm. And he did a lot of great work, but as we progressed and learned more about screenwriting, I think the book's done more damage than anything else.
Why do you think that?
Well, because it's very rudimentary. It's very, very basic.
Oh, you could argue, well, people have built upon that. That was the foundation. But
Yeah.
if you go only from that,
Yeah.
it's like it's very limiting nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't write a screenplay. I don't believe you can write a successful screenplay today just following Sid Field. The basic 3-act structure, again, it goes with goals. Goals drive that. People ask, sometimes, this is funny, right? Sometimes people say, well, the goal must be established before the end of Act 1. I said, well, that's like asking someone, it's like, drop this mug and make sure we hear the sound right after it touches the floor. I know it doesn't make sense because the sound is when it touches the floor.
Now, when they say just before the end of Act 1, there is, in this 3-act structure, you've mentioned the inciting incident, the thing that happens right up front that gets the story rolling.
Yes.
Gets the ball rolling.
Yep.
Then at the end of Act 1, there's usually a turning point of some kind, just before the end.
That's right.
Which should pretty much define the hero's goal. This is the argument there.
Yeah, well, we need to see, as a result of that, we need to see action again. We need to see the character do something from which we understand, now he's on the goal.
Or now at least we know
the goal.
what the challenge is for him.
Yeah, that's right.
Whether he takes that call to adventure or not.
That's right. So the goal is established. The goal is established, the hero is aware of the goal, the audience is aware of the goal. Tick, Act 1.
Right.
That's how it works.
There's our beginning.
Yeah.
We've set things up.
But
That's our setup.
So in other words, you cannot have the goal established before the end of Act 1. In the same way, you cannot have the sound here, before the mug hits the ground.
Yes.
Because it's defined by the goal.
Yes.
Once the goal is established, end of Act 1. Now, the end of Act 2 is a little bit more difficult. A lot of people struggle with it. I've struggled with it.
No, I've heard them define it, we said beginning, middle, end. There's also set up, confrontation, resolution.
Well, every scene works like that. Every sequence works like that. So it becomes problematic because, you can see everything as complication or development or conflict. The resolution is in the 3rd act. But where is the end of Act 2? It's difficult, Some people say it's the lowest point, and it is in most films. It is the lowest point.
It can be, yes.
But then you need to come out of that lowest point as well. And the lowest point often relates to the inner journey, what we call the inner journey, which is related to the theme. So you've got 2 journeys, right? We've got the outer journey, which is what the character does, what we see, the sheriff trying to stop the shark. The inner journey is the character change, is the character overcoming that weakness of lack of responsibility in the
So despite the fact that we've said it has to be revealed through action, visible action, because it's cinema after all, there is still an inner journey that character must follow, and we've got to be able to track that.
But that's also visible through action. That it plays as subtext. The character does that, so therefore we understand how the character works. Beautiful European film that I often use, The Lives of Others. It's a German film where a character believes that he is a good man, although he is trying to imprison people who want to flee the former East Germany, right? So he thinks he's a good man. We think he's not a good man. He needs to change. He needs to change his perspective. And he does change his perspective. And we see that through little actions, through actions. All right? Remember? Plot, character. We see the character change only through little actions. And then we understand, okay, that inner journey is underway, right? At the end of Act 2, there's a lowest point, and it seems like it's not working, right? And that's where the character needs to make an action where we see that now he's fully aware and he's going to change. And that then marks the end of Act 2.
So very often, Act 1 says, here's the problem, but they don't know how to solve that problem until they get to the end of Act 2.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And then that lowest point, we see a particular action by the character that shows that the character is willing to sacrifice themselves. That's really what it's about. Which, again,
it comes to the hero's journey. That's one of the defining things of hero's journey, that there's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
There's that going into the darkness of the soul, which is, in Star Wars, was Luke Skywalker going to the cave to meet Darth Vader when he was on the planet with Yoda, for example.
Yeah.
This kind of scene.
Yeah.
And
we even have it in light-hearted films, you know, because it sounds all very dark. Well,
yes.
in comedies, in romantic comedies, the sacrifice is where the lover is willing to sacrifice everything they believed in, the big lie they set up, right? And they were afraid to tell the truth. Well, at the end of Act 2, they're going to tell the truth, and they're still going to lose the lover.
So it can be a literal sacrifice of life, potentially, a sacrifice of the way of life, the way you used to live your life,
correct,
or just giving up something, to you know,
right,
which might be a humorous thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way they do it.
Yeah, and then so that end of Act 2, in my thinking, is often defined by that inner journey, not by the outer journey, and that's more difficult than the first act. And then we've had the midpoint. We won't talk about that now, but I really believe that a strong midpoint is part of a good 3-act structure. A midpoint that has a reversal. All right, that's usually pretty much in the middle of Act 2. And you know, page numbers. Sid Field works with page numbers. I don't. Blake Snyder does. I think
Blake Snyder saved the cat.
Yeah, Save the Cat.
Yeah.
I think there's a great deal of flexibility, but you need to know what you're doing. Don't worry about the page numbers. Ultimately, in your first draft, the page numbers will be out, and they should be. If you start working towards particular page numbers, you're not thinking about your story.
Because one of those examples is if you have like a 90-minute film. Roughly speaking, the first act is 30 pages, 30 minutes.
A little bit shorter. Usually it's a quarter. It's like 25%.
25%.
Yeah.
Act 2 is longer, Act 3 is. But then there are films that break those rules.
Absolutely.
Like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Close Encounters is a great example. One of my favorite films of all time. I was watching it the other day with my students, right? And I was analyzing it for the first time. I've seen it so many times, I never analyzed it. And I was like, where is this first act going to end?
Yeah.
And it doesn't end until halfway the movie. And then I asked my students at the end, I said, did you enjoy that? They were not into it. I said, this is interesting. Here's a film that breaks radically with what we understand is basic, screenwriting structure. And today's audience doesn't buy it. We bought it. Why was this? Because I think we were in that hype of the UFOs.
I think we're a more patient audience. We'll let the story unfold, and as long as visually it's interesting and working, you can have a 40-minute, 50-minute first act, which that film does.
That's right.
Every act's like roughly the same length, because there's close encounters. There's 3 kinds, and each of those acts is a different encounter.
That's right, yeah.
I did the same with my last film. Every act was basically 30 minutes long exactly, because there were 3 murders in each of these.
Yeah.
One question though, when you're dealing with something like Shakespeare, and there are plays that have 5 acts, how do you turn that into a film?
You don't. And you know, I know there's very successful screenwriters who say, all you need to do is read Shakespeare and you'll be a great screenwriter. I think Shakespeare shows you character flaws really, really well. And if you read the plays, the tragedies, it'll help you set up strong antagonists. And if you can build a strong antagonist, it'll help you to build a good protagonist. So Shakespeare is all about conflicted characters and play that out in a believable way. But I think screenwriting is still very different. And I don't think the 5-act structure, and I know Robert McKee says Raiders of the Lost Ark is 5 acts. I don't think it is. I have a really good friend who works in Hollywood who's paid millions of dollars. He reads my breakdown of Raiders of the Lost Ark on the website to just refresh his understanding of the 3-act structure.
Well, you could almost argue with a strong midpoint, that's kind of like 4 acts.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
4 acts, not 5.
Yes.
It's like television. TV's 4 acts as well, not 5.
So 3 acts, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. Sometimes, depending on the length.
Yeah.
of the acts.
And depending on how
entirely-
much you get paid. If I get paid enough, I'll write another act for you.
Yes, if
It
you're
won't
gonna,
work,
if,
but-
if you're going to do Batman, Dark
Yeah.
Knight, was that 4 acts or 5 acts? Because they extended that, but that's...
No, that's a good one. That's actually... That
It
might
kind of
be-
had a whole
yes,
separate ending,
You're
didn't it?
absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I would argue that could be a good, strong 4-actor rather than a traditional 3-actor. Anyway, structure is an important thing, whether it's 3 or 4 acts or whatever it's going to be. Thank you very much, Karel.
My pleasure.
See you next time on the next instalment in our series on screenwriting with Karel Segers. There we go. We've got, I think, 2 more in that series to come, and then I'm hoping that we'll do another series of tutorials with another teacher, maybe myself doing certain things. We've yet to film those, though.
Maybe you doing certain things.
We have a plan for a series that I might do myself, yes.
Doing certain things.
Certain things.
It's going to be very, very exciting.
We have a Pick My Brain question, which comes from, let me just double check here.
Do we have the bit of music that goes Pick My Brain?
We do. We have a bumper. Let's run the bumper.
Yes, run the bumper.
Indeed. There we are.
That would be it.
That would be it.
What's the question?
From Claire. Is it better to enter a film in film festivals or put it straight online?
Ooh. Depends on whether you think you'll win or not.
Yes, in part. And it also depends what kind of film it is. Let's say you've made a short film. It is still worthwhile entering that into some short film festivals. I would say try the film festivals for about a year or so and go to somewhere like Without a Box and work out which festivals would take that genre, that kind of film. And go to the big ones first that are coming up in the next month and work your way down. But after about a year, whatever success you may or may not had, it's like, that's your festival run, then you might as well put it onto YouTube.
Well, what about the other direction, though? If you put it online first, does that cut you out of putting it into film festivals
It
at all?
can with some. It can indeed. Some festivals want to have first run, their first public screening. By virtue of putting it online, YouTube or Vimeo, it's international screening already. So that can obviate you from getting into certain festivals. Some festivals don't care.
But you certainly want to check the rules for whatever festival you're entering to
So if
make sure that
That's
you're
right.
not
If you've
transgressing.
made a film for Tropfest, for example, in this country, don't put it online. Make it for Tropfest, put the signature item in, enter it in Tropfest. When you don't get in the finals, assuming you don't, right, try a few more festivals with it if it fits. Once you've done the run of a dozen or so festivals and you've either got in or got out, then you can say, okay, that's it, I'll put it online. Some people don't care though. If you don't care about festivals, you just want to get it out there and get it seen and treat it as a showreel kind of piece, just put it online. You might get bigger audience that way quicker.
And I think generally speaking, if you've got a short film that's about cats, you're going to get a better run online than any festival because nobody's interested.
No.
No.
Not unless they're cats that are morbidly obese or something. If you're doing a feature, I would say it's the same approach. Find the right festivals to enter that feature in. Try it for about a year. See how you go. But if after that point, you know, you've had middling success or no success, might as well put it online, get it out there some way. And unless you want to then pursue on-demand video, DVD, that kind of stuff.
So that's the message. Just make sure you understand the rules of any film festivals that you'd like to enter your material in before you go and put it online.
Once it's online, it's available for everyone to see for free, essentially. And if you're happy with that, that's cool. But it probably cuts you out of any future distribution deal.
Essentially, it's too late.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, that's our show. That's our first show in this second series, and we are done. Not too bad, I think, despite a few technical glitches that we had setting up. I hope everything went well in the vision switching there. I can't see what's going on. We don't have our monitors working at the moment, after
Are
all.
you trying to sort of give the whole game away here? Is that the trick?
We're a film school. That's our point. That's what our mission in life is, to give the game away, essentially.
So if you like what you see, and we can't see any of it, but you can, write to us.
Write to us at veronica@agirlandagun.tv or tweet us at agirlandagun.
Do we have a hashtag?
No, we don't. Just tweet us at that Twitter address. And you can find our website at agirlandagun.tv. That's it. Thanks for watching. There's more episodes coming down the track with this new group. But for now, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
All you need to make a movie is a gun and a gun. Come along and join the party. Party stand at the
haircut? You don't need a haircut.
I haven't had my hair cut for 6 weeks.
Okay, we're recording. Let's do it then. Okay.
I haven't had my hair cut for 6 weeks.
Okay, shush.
I haven't had my hair cut for 6 weeks.
If you want to
I'm
get
just
out in
going
5
to give
minutes, we're not going to
I'm
do
going
it
to give you
now.
lots of outtakes here.